Hey, Jefi, how are you?
Ed, I'm great. Our countdown was different this time than normal.
I know.
Kind of threw me for a loop.
It's a live broadcast, and they've changed our countdown. It was a little scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, so we're gonna have just a little disclaimer going on here. I've got 3 dogs, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my husband, probably the pool guy is going to come by during the middle of this podcast. So everybody just hold tight. There's only so much an editor can do.
That's right.
But let's get this thing rolling.
There's a lot of action.
Yeah, there's a lot of action.
We're putting the messy in the middle. So, go ahead, Jeff.
Always messy in the middle. Okay, so we have to do a little shout out to Kristen Starrett, who's a white hat, who lovingly sends me notes every week about our podcasts. This girl, she's so awesome. She's an incredible agent. She's just outside of Sacramento, California. Anybody wants her information, we're going to put it in the notes below so you can call her and get some good real estate stuff happening. But we asked her, what can we talk about that you want to hear about? And she said, I freaking hate calling people. And I thought to myself, and then she said, you're probably good at it. I said, no. And then she said, well, Ed's probably good at it. I'm all, yeah, he's an overachiever. So that's why I'm the narrator today and you're the meat and potatoes of the deal. So let's get it rolling.
I know. Let's get it rolling, everybody. So we're going to talk about dialing for dollars.
Dialing for
dollars.
Go ahead,
Jeff. I jumped in.
All right. Okay. Let's start with why. Okay. I think we all know why we need to call. How are you going to make that not boring?
Well, way to raise the bar on me.
No, I said it really low.
It's really fun. Yeah, I know. So here's the deal. It's the number one lead generation activity you can do. It just is.
I know.
It's the number one lead gen activity you can do. And the bizarre thing is, if you look at the National Association of Realtors, they do those buyer and seller surveys. The number one complaint that our clients have is they never hear from us again.
Right.
And the number one fear that agents have is that we're going to be imposing on them, like, oh, they don't want to hear from me. So you got really like you got 3 things working it here. It's the number one thing you should do. It's the number one thing your clients want from you is to not just have you jam boogie after the deal's closed. and it's the number one fear. So we're afraid to do what our clients want that makes you money. How stupid is that?
Right. So maybe we all need a big Post-it note on our computer that says our clients want to hear from us. Right? Maybe that would help.
They want to hear from us, and and even if they don't, just tell yourself that lie. They want to hear from you, right? So it's like,
okay. The other thing is, and we talked about this in an earlier podcast, the market is shifting for all of us and market times are longer. And where we used to, list the house and then call and go, congratulations, you got 25 offers. And then congratulations, you're in escrow. Now, we have to have those tougher calls. So if you don't call your clients, it's quite possible and probable you'll lose that client by lack of having this discussion. But before you move on, I don't want to talk about in escrow clients. I want to talk about people who are in our database and people we haven't talked to in a while, maybe 3 to 5 years. How does that look?
Right. Yeah, and those are the scary calls to make, and we're going to get into some tips and tricks.
Okay.
I know you're going to ask me on that on the back end of this.
Okay.
But,
all right.
But no, we're talking, when we're saying caller, we're calling, it's people in our database who we may have not talked to in the last 30 days to 5 years, right? We've all got some people hanging out there. It's
a good spread.
It's like that you're like, oh, that deal didn't go well. They don't want to hear from me, right? But you got to make those calls, and we'll talk about the reasons why a little bit more and tips and tricks on that. But the other point on this, in terms of the why, can I keep going on that?
Yeah, of course you can.
The thing you got to remember, and Coach Julie on that episode, on our coaching episode, really drove this home, is that the calls that you make today, that isn't going to drop into your account for 90 days minimum. And so you've got to be making calls now. If you want to close transactions this year from a new buyer or a new referral, you've got to work to generate that before October 1st.
That's right. She did drive that home. That's a really good episode to listen to too, because she talks a lot about building out the pipeline. Can we jump into the fear? Because I think that, Kristen and I taking us into the equation here, the fear part, I think, stops us and people besides you.
Well, I'm human too. It stops me too, but it's a real thing. I think it's like any fear, you got to recognize it, right?
Okay.
So fear, call resistance is a real thing.
Okay.
There's no shame in it. It's just a real thing that we all deal with. And there's ways and tricks to power through that. But, the first is you're not imposing. You're giving them, surveys say it's the number one thing that our past clients want. So chew on that for a while.
All right.
And then, it's just, so you have to think about, okay, what's the fear all about? So let me ask you, Jefi, if you have call resistance, what's your fear around that?
Well, number one, am I bothering them? Am I calling them at a time that they're not really available to talk to me? And then I put them out. And the funny thing, Ed, and we've talked about this in another podcast too, is my clients are so used to me texting them that when I call them, they call me back and go, "Oh, are you okay? What's going on?" Oh, no, I'm just checking in. Yeah. So I guess, maybe that's a good thing. I still stay in touch with them, but I think it comes down to bothering. If you want to be black and white, I also want to irritate them.
Yeah, and they want to hear from you.
They want to be irritated.
That's what it shows. And they want to be irritated. So I'll tell you a real example. This is a true story, and I haven't really thought about this before this. As everybody knows, I was commercial real estate, and then I was in technology, and I went back to residential real estate. So during that technology period, when I wasn't in real estate, I used a realtor. Lynn and I used a realtor to buy our home.
Okay.
And we had a very good and we referred that realtor, and we had a very good relationship. And we bought the home, and we did a bunch of remodeling, and they said they were going to come back and view it and see what we had done and reach out to us. And I never heard from them. And it really irritated me. And I was not, and I had great service, but I was not going to use them if I listed my home. Now I ended up going into the business and I did it myself, obviously, but it was a real lesson to me. It's they want to share the experience. And, if you just walk away from it and you don't reach out and talk to them and say, "Hey, what do you need?" And you're not there. It's kind of irritating. And we're we don't want to burden them.
But the clients want to hear from us. People want to hear from us.
They want to hear from you. And so I think that's the number one fear piece. And then I know for me, the one I struggle to get over is if there's somebody I haven't talked to in a long time, it's hard to make that call. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
so this is what I've done in the past, and I don't know if this is a great idea, but this is what I've done. I usually will text them and say, "Hey, Ed, I haven't talked to you in quite a long time. I'd love to catch up. When's a good time for us to chat?" And so at least there's this thing where they're like, "Oh, who's that? Oh, it's Jefi. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess I have time to chat." And then at least there's the soft opening type of thing. What do you think about that? You think that's me being a baby?
I think that I just rip the Band-Aid and call them and then follow up with the text.
Okay. All right.
You're going to get a lot, the reality is you're going to get a lot of no answers in today's world. That's fine. What I do is I'll leave a voicemail. Yeah. And then I'll follow up with the text. to just say, hey, just reaching out, see how you're doing. If you got a moment to chat, give me a call back.
Okay. I have a question. It might fall into the tips and tricks, and we can wait if it does. But if you have like a really hard call that you need to make, that you kind of keep looking at the list, you're like, good, I want to make that call. Do you call an easy call first, or do you make the hard call first?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's the tips and tricks. That's funny. You went right to that. But no, we can talk about it now. I'm happy to skip forward because it's organic.
Okay.
But what I'll do is like if my goal is to set if I make 5 calls, I'll call the easiest one first.
Okay.
That gets me on a roll.
Going.
Right. Yeah. So get the flow going.
Yep.
Then I'll call one, and then like number 3 or number 4 are going to be my harder calls. Like, the ones I've kind of been dreading. And then I finish with an easy one. Yeah. It's like you warm up. It's like doing a workout. Like if I'm doing 5 400s, like the first one, it's the heart of the workout. And then I want to finish downhill. I want to finish with a nice, easy one, that is going to go well. Yeah. And then that helps. And we'll talk into other tips and tricks, but that's going to help propel you to the next day. Okay. Because you're not good. Like thinking, oh my gosh, I just got, I just had that nightmare call, or, in your mind. And then we want to be clear that if clients, I know. But if we have clients listening to this podcast, we want to make sure it's not you we're scared of, it's us that we're scared of for bugging you or the hard calls. Like we need a $200,000 price reduction or whatever. Anyway, okay, let's keep it rolling. You don't ask me, hey, what number am I that you're calling? Are you number 3 or am I number 5?
Where do I fit into this scenario? Okay, all right.
Am I the easy call or the hard call?
The goal of calling. Let's talk about that. The goal of calling.
Yes. So the goal of calling. All right. I'm looking at my notes.
Connect.
I'm sorry.
See, Ed's really good at calls, but he kind of can't follow his notes.
He can't read. So, and I'm not looking at my notes now. The number one goal is to connect. Yeah. And then after that, it's to qualify, and then ask for the referral. That's the order. Number 1 is connect. Okay. Yep. So you're reaching out and you want to make that connection or reconnection and get caught up and do those things. And as we've talked before, it's like ask for permission to have the call. And don't ask, hey, is this a good time? But ask like, is this a bad time to chat?
Ooh, I like that one.
And then they'll literally sit up and say, you can feel it. The energy is like, oh no, this is a good time. Because you've given them permission to say no. Right. And nobody does. It's very rare for people to do that. So they're in control and say, hey, we haven't, Jefi, it's been a long time since we've talked. How are things going?
Oh, I thought you forgot about me. You're terrible. You're a terrible agent. That's not going to happen,
sometimes
people.
Sometimes it can feel that way.
Okay, so here's something
that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Here's something that I do a lot during these type of calls, and it works really well for me. So I'm a connector anyway, just by nature. That's how I communicate. It's the most important part of the piece to me. If I don't feel like, if someone tells me that their dog just died or they've had a really rough way to go, I'm definitely not going to be going into qualifying and asking for the referral. I just don't. That's me. I read the room. Yeah. I see that. Okay. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, you don't want to be like that guy, right? Yeah, I'm sorry your dog died, but are you too busy for my referrals? No, that's not. Right. It's like you want to connect, you back off. You do what you do what's appropriate.
Exactly. So the next thing I do, and this is kind of, I've done this since I started in this business, and I don't even know where it came from. I wish I could give credit to somebody for it because I'm sure I stole it from someone. Steal like an artist. So I connect. And then when I'm getting to a place, I always say, hey, do you mind if I put my business hat on? And my clients
I was going to talk about that because that transition. That is such a great, that is a great tip or trick.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. And it works. And they laugh. Yeah. Usually they laugh. They're like, really, Jeff, you putting a hat on? I'm all, yeah, I'm putting my business hat on. It's like, looks like a house. And then I ask, hey, do you know any friends or family members looking to buy or sell? I'd love to help them, or whatever the dialogue might be for that day. But okay, sorry. I keep taking your tips and tricks, which is next, unless you want to talk about anything else with the why or the goal.
No, I think we've kind of, gotten to that point, which like, it's really important. You need to do it. They want to hear from you. Call resistance is a real thing. We all go through it because we kind of fear this rejection piece, or like, oh, I should have called them sooner, or whatever story you're telling in your head. And we all tell them. Mm-hmm. And then, but you got to make the calls. If it's like really, really important. Yep. So tips and tricks on how to do that. I think number one, time block it. If it's not scheduled, it won't get done. You'll come up with some other reason. So pick a time that works for you. I like 11 o'clock.
Okay.
That's a good time for me. It lets me get my morning going. And I think my clients have gotten their morning started. And it kind of is that lead in lull up until lunch.
Okay.
So I kind of like that 11 to 12, 11 to 12:30 as a time block. And then taking a page out of your book from our last episode, our recent episode, takeaways from Peak. If something comes up and you can't do it, then you got to erase and replace it. So if you have some appointment and you can't do it, or something comes up, you take that 11 o'clock and you shove it into the afternoon.
Right.
You just don't get rid of it.
Oh, so, I just remembered the agent's name. I just remembered the agent's name that taught me that. Colette Lipsy. This is a shout out to Colette Lipsy for teaching me about erase and replace. Bam.
Erase and replace. I love it. So it's like, okay, I can't do my 11. I'm shoving it over to my 3 o'clock.
Okay.
And you just drop it on over and block it there. And then try to make the calls from the same place. And like I said, the same time of day. So you want to set the environment for it.
Okay.
And that's just kind of like any habit, right? You're setting the mental discipline to do it. Mm-hmm. The second one, any comments on that one, on time blocking and erase and replace?
No, I completely agree with you that if you do that, and here's something that I would say. If you get through 15 calls, great. If you get through 5 calls, great. It's the average of just doing it over and over again, because sometimes you might have a really long call and you can't be down on yourself for not making your numbers that day because you connected in a really deep way.
Which is a perfect segue to my next point, which is set a realistic daily goal.
Okay, good.
And make it an and or. So it's like, I'm going to do 5 calls a day or 4 calls a day for an hour or an hour and a half.
Gotcha.
Because if you had 2 calls and it went an hour, that'd be great. Because like you really got deep with your past client. And it's the old question like, oh, I did 10 calls today. I could have done 12, but somebody asked me a question. It's like you want to have a conversation.
Right.
You want to be respectful of their time. You want to be able to let them get off the phone. You don't want to be crazy about it. But, have a conversation. And if you had 3 or 4 great conversations, and you hit your time block, you're good.
It's perfect.
That's a good day.
Rock and roll.
I think the next one is set a call objective. So know why you're calling on that when you put the real estate hat on.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one.
Yep. Say, hey, Jefi, would it be a problem if I put my real estate hat on right now?
No, please do.
The market's really dynamic. It's changing. You're seeing a lot of talk about inflation and inventory. What questions might you have about that?
That was really good.
As a resource here.
Yeah.
I know it's got to be on your mind. Like you can't turn on the news and not hear the word inflation 3 times in 5 minutes. It's like it's everywhere.
Right.
So, and every article they're talking about inventory. Would you like to hear what's going on in our market? What questions do you have about that and how it could affect your family?
I love the word dynamic.
That question.
Right. I love the word dynamic. I think that's such an amazing word because it pulls you in and you're like, well, yeah, it's dynamic. It's moving. It's shaking. It's different. And you're giving them the opportunity to ask things that might be really scary to them. You have people who are at retirement age who want to move. Is it now a good time to sell? So I think that's another thing, Ed, that I want to bring back to the very beginning of why we call. A lot of times people don't even know what they need until you have a conversation with them. So they might have been really worried about something with the market, and then you just get to shed some light on it, and now they can let that piece go because obviously the news likes to sell, and so they hype things up, and we get to give them really good education. So those calls are really important.
Yeah, because the media has the flair for the dramatic because that sells. Yep. And so you'll see a stat like inventory has increased at the highest rate in 40 years. Well, yeah, because it's gone from like a quarter of a month to a month and a half. And so that's a huge percentage change, but we're still like way under equilibrium. And so that you can shed light on stuff like that, right? So it's like, that's where, it's changing, but it's, the sky's not falling, whatever you need to do. We're like, oh my gosh, interest rates are so high. Well, it's like, the 40-year average is 8% and we're at like 5.25%. And, they've gone down a little bit. A lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
And inflation today, inflation's gone down a little bit. So, things are really changing and dynamic. And so you want to be that resource and have that conversation. And then I think the big one is and this is hard for all of us. You got to make the ask, which is, so here it comes. Hey, I know I haven't asked you this question in a while and things change. Would I still be the realtor that you'd use if you were buying and selling or the one you'd refer to a family member?
Yes.
Or friend?
Of course, silly.
Of course. Well, great. I just want to check because things can change. Your brother could be a realtor now for all we know. And I would obviously not be getting in the way of that. So I just wanted to check to make sure, and I'm here to serve you. Right. So now we've asked that and reinforced that and asked for permission for the referral. And now you can go to the next level and say, hey, so it's a great time to buy because things are easing up a little bit. So there are more opportunities. If you know anybody that might be looking to buy, please refer me. And on the flip side, on the sales, we've got a great system in place to maximize the profit that your friends or family or yourself could make.
Right.
So keep us in mind, right?
Good.
So now we've kind of redone that. And the good news is if they say, well, my brother just got his license and I just wouldn't be able to do that. Now they're off your database and you're going to save like how much, all the mailings, the time, you're thinking you've got a relationship and you don't.
Right.
And you really got to ask that question.
You're right. It's a service to you and to them.
And to them. And you could even say in that case, it's like, hey, that's great. Have him call me. If he's new, I'd love to give him some insight, having done this for 20 years. Right. And now you're helping, so you might even join your team. Like, you don't know where that could go.
You're right. You don't. Okay, mister, give us your, you do. Okay. Give us your best ending to this so we can keep this tight. What would you like to end our little podcast with?
I would say make it as fun as you can and build in some rewards. So make it a game.
Oh.
When you're making your calls, like that's what I try to do. It's like, hey, I'm going to get to 5. And we talked about this on our own accountability. It's like, take 5 marbles and like move them from one to the other. Right. Get up and walk around after each call you complete. And then when you're done, give yourself a reward. Might be a little piece of chocolate, might be a cup of coffee, might be calling an old friend, might be sending your accountability partner like the text like, done, how about you, Jefi?
I'm calling Kristen.
Rub it in, whatever it is.
Right. Just give yourself a little
I
reward.
like to make it fun.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
give
that's
yourself
good.
a little reward. And,
Sure.
the other thing to remember in this is that the way we work, we're working by referral. Most agents listening to this are working by referral. You're not cold calling. You're calling people you have relationships with, right?
Right.
So remember that. And if they said, "Hey, Ed, I thought you used to be great, but you're not, I don't want to work with you anymore." Well, it's like, well, God bless you. Thanks for letting me know. And you're off the list, right? And now you just saved me like $50 a year or whatever it is. So it's okay. And it's okay.
Yeah, not everybody's going to love us. That's okay. And they can change their mind too, which is totally their prerogative. But okay, I think there's some really good nuggets here. I'm feeling fired up. I feel like I'm going to make at least one call today. Just kidding. Anyway,
good. We'll
I
check
appreciate
in
all
and
your
see how
insight.
it's going.
Okay, good. All right, everybody.
Well, fantastic. And that was all right. We'll see you later.
Ciao, everybody.